Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. It really does mean a lot that you've taken the time because I know how busy this role can be and how much you're all holding in a day. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm Georgina, and today we're going to spend some time exploring children's well-being, not as something separate from what we do, but as something that sits right at the heart of everything that we're doing. And I want to start by saying this isn't about adding more to your day. It's not about walking away with a long list of things you feel you should be doing. Instead, it's about noticing the moments that matter, noticing what's already there, and perhaps gently reflecting on where small shifts might make a big difference. As we go through today, I'd like to encourage you to gently reflect on your own practice and experiences as we explore these together. So, what do we mean by well-being? Well-being can feel like quite a broad term, and sometimes it's used in lots of different ways, but for me, it always comes back to something quite simple. It's about children feeling safe, seen, valued, and able to be themselves. Now, that doesn't mean children are happy all the time, because real well-being includes a full range of emotions. It's about children knowing when they feel upset, overwhelmed, frustrated, that there is someone there who will meet them with calm, understanding, and care. Sometimes it can be helpful to pause and to really picture this in practice. Now, when a child feels safe and secure, it doesn't always look like something big or um, really obvious. Often it can feel and be quite quiet. It might be a child who's feeling confident enough to move away from you and explore, knowing that they can come back whenever they need to. It might be a child who seeks you out when something feels difficult rather than withdrawing or becoming or feeling overwhelmed. And sometimes it's simply a child who feels comfortable enough to be completely themselves. Now, whether that's loud, quiet, energetic, or thoughtful, it's those small indicators that tell us how much a child is really feeling internally. Now, this links really closely with the work of John Balby, who spoke about how children need a secure base, a sense of safety, because before they can explore the world around them, they have to have that. And when we really sit with that idea, it reminds us that well-being isn't something separate from learning. It really is the foundation of it. So I just want to ask you to take a little pause here and just reflect. When do the children in your care seem most settled? And what does that look like? Just have a little think about that for one moment, and we'll come back to things later. So let's talk about why it matters. So when we prioritize well-being, we're not stepping away from learning, we're actually strengthening it. Research from the Education Endowment Foundation highlights that children's social and emotional development has a significant impact on later outcomes, including learning, behavior, and relationships. But beyond the research, we all see this every day in practice because a child who's feeling safe is more likely to engage, more able to explore, and more open to new or different relationships. On the other hand, a child who doesn't feel emotionally secure is often just trying to cope, and that can show up in so many different ways. So instead of asking, what is this behavior? We begin to gently shift to what might this child be communicating? What might they need right now? And that shift alone can change everything. I also think this is where our perspective as adults becomes really important because it can be really easy, especially on busy days, to focus on what we're seeing on the surface. But when we pause and look a little bit deeper, we can often realize that what we're seeing is the communication. A child who's struggling to sit, a child who's becoming upset quickly, a child who's withdrawing. These aren't problems to fix, but they're signals to understand, especially in our role, as I imagine many of you who are working in early years, or if you're childminders, We know the children deeply and we know what their usual typical behavior is for that child, and we can notice those shifts. And when we begin to respond in that way, it's not only changing the child's experience, but it changes how we feel in those moments too. And this brings us to, well, us, because we and the role we play are such a central part of children's well-being. The sustained shared thinking and emotional well-being scales really emphasize the importance of warm, responsive, and emotionally available adults. And I think that's such an important reminder that children don't need us to be perfect. They don't need us to always have the right words. They just need us to be present, to notice, to respond, and to be emotionally available. Now, we often talk about co-regulation, and really that's about children borrowing our calm until they can begin to develop their own. And the reality is, we don't always feel calm in ourselves. There are busy days, there are overwhelming moments, but even in those moments, it's the repair that matters. Coming back, reconnecting, that's where the learning is, both for children and ourselves. And I think it's really important to gently acknowledge here that that isn't always easy. There are moments where we will feel stretched, where we're managing multiple needs at once, particularly if you're here as a lone worker, and there's not someone else to tag team in. We're trying to hold everything together. And in those moments, it's not about getting everything right. It's about those small moments of connection, a glance, a tone of voice, a response that can remind the child that I'm here. You're not alone. And those moments carry so much weight, more weight than we obviously can realize in that particular moment. Slowing down. One of the most powerful and sometimes most challenging things we can do is slow down because our environments can be and can feel busy. There are often routines, transitions, expectations, but when we slow down, even just slightly, we notice more, we listen more deeply, and we respond rather than react. And often the most meaningful moments are the ones that we might otherwise rush past, sorry. A child might be showing you something small, maybe a ladybird that they found in the garden or a feather. A quiet observation, just stepping back and seeing an interaction taking place, or a pause in play. These are moments of connection. And when children feel that we're truly with them, we're not distracted, we're not rushing, that's where that well-being begins to deepen. So these moments of slowing down are really, really important for children and for ourselves again. So those who know me will know that I am a big advocate for child-led play, and this coincides really nicely with well-being. Excuse me. Child-led play is such a powerful part of supporting children's well-being because when children are able to lead their own play, something really important happens. They begin to feel a sense of autonomy, a sense of control, and a really deep level of engagement. And that feeling of this is mine, I am capable, I can do this is so, so important for emotional well-being. It links closely to the characteristics of effective learning, particularly around engagement and active learning. When children are deeply involved in their play, we often see sustained concentration, motivation, perseverance, and a real enjoyment. And all those things are really closely connected to how children feel about themselves. It also links to the work of Vygotsky, I can never say this one, who emphasised the importance of sustained shared thinking and interaction. Um, Sometimes when we step back and really observe children in child-led play, we can notice how absorbed they become. They're not thinking about outcomes. They're not thinking about whether they're doing it right. They're simply in the moment, present. And that sense of immersion can be incredibly regulating for children. And for some children, especially those who may feel overwhelmed or unsettled, that kind of deep self-directed play can bring a real sense of calm and security. We can often also see this through schematic play. Children exploring repeating actions such as transporting, positioning, connecting, again and again, returning to these things. Now, sometimes from an adult perspective, that can look repetitive or even a bit puzzling, but for the child, it's deeply meaningful. It's how they're making sense of the world. And when we're allowing space for that, rather than interrupting or redirecting, we're also supporting their emotional well-being too. When we're following children's interests, we're communicating something really powerful to that child. We're communicating that you matter, your ideas matter, you are capable. And that builds not just learning, but confidence, integrity, and well-being. So, the environment. Our environments communicate so much, often without us even realizing. A calm, predictable, inviting space can help children feel safe and settled, whereas busy and overwhelming environments can sometimes heighten dysregulation for children and for adults as well. You know, sometimes if we walk in to well, our own home somewhere and everything's a big mess, you know, maybe you walk into your bedroom and you've been emptying your wardrobe earlier that day and everything come in and there's just stuff everywhere, it can feel overwhelming. And we, even as adults who have been exploring our own emotions for a significant amount of time, can feel overwhelmed in those moments. So it's understandable how children who have not got that sense of self fully yet and that sense of how to manage their feelings and emotion can feel overwhelmed. So guidance such as the Birth to Five Matters highlight the importance of enabling environments that support both emotional security and exploration. Now, this doesn't mean everything has to be perfect, and children do make a mess. Let's acknowledge that because they do, don't they? Um, it doesn't mean everything has to be perfect. It's about cozy, safe spaces, familiar resources that children can return to again and again, and areas that children can retreat to, spaces that feel predictable, that feel safe, and that quietly say, you belong here. Simple shifts such as looking at lighting, such as looking at noise levels. You know, if you've got lots of noisy toys out, or if you've got loud music, or maybe the Tony box on with other things, can heighten dysregulation. Again, bright lights. If we've got overhead lighting instead of maybe some twinkly lights or maybe lamps, can heighten dysregulation. Um, the temperature of the room, if you're inside or if you're outside, if there's areas to retreat which are shaded, temperature has a massive impact um, on well-being, and things like air quality is another thing that I know as research is getting done into. So all these things can have an impact on a child's well-being beyond the obvious things such as being able to return to um, their environment and play. So, again, those who know me will know I am a strong advocate for the power of outdoors. Outdoors gives children something that sometimes can be harder to offer indoors. It's that sense of freedom. There's often less restriction, fewer expectations, and more space for children to be able to move in the way that their bodies need, particularly those larger gross motor movements that can't always be explored inside. Um, and for some children, particularly those who may feel overwhelmed indoors, this can make a huge difference. It allows them to regulate in a more natural and instinctive way without us needing to intervene so much. Outdoors often offers something quite unique. It brings that space, that freedom, and often a natural sense of calm. Fresh air, movement, and natural light all support regulation in ways that we don't need to actively manage. For babies, it can be incredibly soothing, the sounds, the movement, the light. And for older children, it allows that release, those big movements, big plays, big feelings. And often behaviors we might see indoors begin to soften when we're outside. I don't know about you guys, but I know personally I feel much calmer. There's just something about being outdoors, particularly certain spaces, that bring that sense of relaxation. There's so much research into not just children thriving outdoors, but adults and how it positively impacts on well-being. Things like feeling the grass beneath your toes, those grounding feelings, the fact that when you have mud on your hands, it releases endorphins and it makes you happier. So it's proven not just for children, but for us as adults, what a positive impact for our well-being being outdoors can have. And there's something about nature that slows us down. It invites curiosity, that it's creating space for connection and for calm. And sometimes the most powerful thing for well-being we can do is just step outside. And I know sometimes that's not always easy. There might be challenges that make it a little bit trickier that sometimes, and we have to use our own knowledge of the children and how that's going as to when it's the right time to go out, and what you do, whether you step out if you've got a garden space or whether you go on a walk or how you want to incorporate that. But the being outdoors has a massive,
This is a reminder.
I'm really sorry, my Alexa's going off.
15-minute tidy up time.
Okay, we'll just ignore that. So Alexa, stop. Sorry, I normally switch it off. Apologies, everybody. Um, yes, so I think the outdoors can have a massive impact on positive well-being. So I have popped in some well-being techniques here. Now, these are not extra tasks. They are small, meaningful approaches. So things like getting down to a child's level, using their name and slowing your voice, creating predictable routines, offering calm and safe spaces. And what's really important here that everything doesn't need to be done at once. Sometimes if we try and incorporate too much at once, it's overwhelming for the children and for us, and it doesn't stick. In fact, it's often more meaningful to choose just one or two small things and really embed them into everyday practice. That's not to say that you can incorporate more later, but just do it gradually. Because it's the consistency, the repetition that makes a big difference. Not doing everything, but doing a few things really well and really intentionally, because well-being is built in small, repeated moments. Supporting big emotions. Now, if we're all honest, big emotions can feel challenging, but they're also often where some of the most important learning happens. Our role isn't to stop the emotion, it's to stay with the child through it, to name what they might be feeling. Like that feels really, that looks like it feels really frustrating. To validate, I can see why that feels hard. And also to hold boundaries gently where needed. I think it's important to say here that this doesn't mean the emotion disappears straight away. Sometimes children need time, um, and need to move through what they're feeling. Our role isn't to just rush past that process. It's to stay with them while that happens, to be calm, to be a steady presence. And over time, through these repeated experiences, children begin to internalize that sense of safety. The Early Intervention Foundation highlights how early emotional support helps to build long-term resilience. We're not removing the emotion, we are helping children move through it. And that's really, really powerful and such an important role. Joy is a priority. Now, this might sound really obvious. Joy matters. And I think sometimes in busy environments and busy days, it can be easy for some people to see joy as an extra, but really it's essential for us all. Laughter, playfulness, shared delight, these things are what build connection. When we join children in their play, we are strengthening relationships and that joy becomes contagious. I'm sure everybody here will be have been around a child that maybe has started laughing about something. And sometimes we don't even know what is that started it off. We don't understand it. Sometimes it can be a child on their own that something's tickled them, or a moment between two children. And before you know it, you're joining in laughing and you don't always know why, because laughter and joy are contagious. Everybody wants that feeling. And when you see a child fully immersed in that, it's hard not to get involved. Um, these moments are the moments that stay with children. They shape how children feel about themselves, about others, and about the world around them. So, teaching calm. Children can't access strategies in the middle of overwhelm. If we try and incorporate tools only when a child is dysregulated, it will not be successful. Calm is something we practice through repetition, through shared experiences, and through connection. Now, there's so many different ways that we can do that and explore. And there will be ones that you might see that I've got listed on the next slide that you already do. There might be some different ones, but it's so important that we practice these regularly and through moments of calm. So whether that is things like breathing together, simple movements or yogas, sensory play, mindfulness moments. These aren't things we teach once. They have to live alongside children. Now, if we think of ourselves as adults, we often have strategies that we may use to manage how we're feeling, but we have developed them over time and through experience. And what works for one may not work for another. And we get to know ourselves, especially as time progresses. I know things that I find overwhelming that maybe other people wouldn't. And I also know ways to protect myself and my calm. And it's important we adapt ours, whatever it is that we're wanting to support children with, to the children. So there might be certain children that you will know that in moments of dysregulation that they will respond well to, and you could try that exact same thing with another child, and they don't respond well to it because they need something else. So getting to know the children, practicing these in moments of calm that we can then return to, and they have the tools then to return to is really, really important. Um, children are at the beginning of their journey. So when we're practicing these small moments of calm together in quiet and low pressure ways, we're slowly building that foundation for them that can be a really positive start to their well-being journey. I don't think I've listed on here either, but things like incorporating positive affirmations and things as well. So not only regulation tools that can be used for and well-being tools that can be used for dysregulation, but things that really enhance children's sense of themselves and build on that confidence. And even simple things like we'll do at meal times and snack times and things like that. We'll sit as a group with the children, the cohort I've got now, and that we will have discussions about what we think are really good about our friends. And as the children sit there and hear the things that their friends are saying about them and their reaction to that, you can just see their little faces beaming, is really powerful. I know myself, I respond really well to positive affirmations, whether that's just from myself or from other people. I think everybody likes and needs to hear kind things said about them sometimes. So if we can be the ones that bring that to themselves and we have opportunities for children to look in mirrors and see how wonderful they are and look at their unique differences, similarities, everything, and see what truly makes them special, we are only strengthening a positive well-being and sense of self for them. So I just wanted to make sure that I touched on that, but I haven't unfortunately put that in the slide. But there are lots of different ways we can do that and build on children's sense of self, as well as supporting emotional well-being for their peers, which I think obviously incorporates with kindness, and all these things go hand in hand. So let me move on to the next slide. Okay, the emotional load of educators. I just wanted to come back round to us again because our own well-being is deeply, deeply intertwined with children's. When we feel calm, grounded, and emotionally available, children feel it. And it creates a sense of safety and steadiness that they can lean into. But equally, when we're feeling overwhelmed or anxious or stretched, that can be felt too. Not because necessarily we're doing anything wrong, but because children are so attuned to us. They notice our tone, our pace, our presence, often more than our words. And I think it's really important to consider not as a pressure, but just as an awareness, because it reminds us that our well-being isn't separate from our role. It's a part of it. And that doesn't mean that we need to be calm all the time. Means we need to be human. We need to allow space for ourselves, noticing when we need a pause and recognizing when we feel stretched. Now, that could be something as simple as thinking, you've got a lot going on outside of work and you think, right, I think today we need to go to the woods or the seaside, wherever you are, and have time outdoors because you know that's going to have a positive impact on yourself. Or maybe you're having a difficult morning and children have been feeling dysregulated and that's starting to affect your own well-being. So maybe you put the kettle on and make yourself a flask of tea or get some calm toys out and blow some bubbles or whatever it is that you need. It's just important to consider yourselves in this as well. Um, sorry. Um, the way we care for ourselves shapes the way that are able to care for others. Nobody can pour from an empty cup. So please just make sure you're considering yourselves as well. This work is emotional. It asks a lot of us. It asks to show up, to stay present, and to support others even when we're tired ourselves. So it's really important we acknowledge that because this role asks us to give emotionally, consistently, and often without pause. And yet, so much of what we do might go unseen, but it matters. Every small moment of connection that we have with children, every time we respond with care, is making a difference, even if you can't always feel it in that moment. Often with children in their early years, it can be years later when these things really start to show, and we are building the foundations for these children. Please remember, you matter too. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be present, and that is more than enough. On this slide, I've added some references here. If any of you would like to look further into some of the research behind the practice and behind the information in this webinar. So I would like to leave you with some gentle reflections right now. Some things for you to think about with your own setting, your own practice, your own environment. What does well-being look like in your setting? What could you do more of? What could you do less of? And what might you notice more? And finally, what does well-being look like to you so that you can thrive too? Because the way we feel, the way we show up matters. Children don't need perfect environments. They need emotionally present adults. And the fact that you're here today, reflecting, thinking, and engaging, that already says so much about the care that you give. Thank you so much for your time today. I think Natalie might pause the recording.